Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second Walk and Talk webinar hosted by StandICT. We will be having today a really special session right before Christmas, which is going to be related to artificial intelligence standards. So we will be having a super excellent list of speakers. So thank you very much for joining us today. For those of you who probably didn't really have the opportunity, StandICT is a European project, pretty much funded by the H 2020 program, and it's coordinated by Tri-State Services, but also with the contribution from Dublin City University and the company Australia. No? We will be having today some, like I said, some really high level and top class list of speakers. I will start myself. My name is Cesar Gonzalez. I'm the CEO of Australia. Like I said, it's one of the partners at StandICT, and I will give you some high-level overview on what is the objectives for StandICT. No? With me today, we will having Stefano Nativi, which is the Big Data Chief Scientist at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. Stefano coordinates scientifically the GRC Artificial Intelligence and Big Data Community of Practice. And he is also coordinator of the AI Watch initiative from the European Commission. Even if he couldn't join us today on live, he will send us, he recorded a video. It's Lindsay Frost. He is the Chief Standardization Engineer at NIC Europe. Lindsay is a board member of ETSI, as well as contributes to several SDOs and technical committees, and specifically in ETSI, he is the chair of the operational coordination group on artificial intelligence. No? And also, which is quite important for today as well, he is the chair of the artificial intelligence efforts at the StandICT Observatory that we will see in a few seconds. No? We also have Carl Brun, which is the Director of Standards Development at Austrian Standards. Carl is the technical board member at the European Committee for Standardization, also known as STEM. Last but not least, we will have also Fergal Finn, which is the Standards Manager at the National Standards Authority of Ireland. No? Fergal has been working in the Standards Business Development Group for several years, and he will give us some high-level overview on the standardization efforts on Ireland. No? Before we start with the different presentation and the different slides, there is a specific box in the application where you can find the Q&A. You pretty much can post several questions in the chat box, and we will be looking to the questions throughout the presentations and throughout the session. We will have at the end a Q&A session, but we can perhaps take one quick question for after each time slot. No? So without further ado, we can really start. Like I said, the agenda, I will be presenting for around 10 minutes, which is the overall idea for StandICT. Some of you may know the initiative, but for those of you who it's the first time, I will give you some high-level overview. Stefano will somehow put the spotlight on the European Commission AI Watch, this initiative, also around 10 minutes it's a presentation. Lindsay, throughout the video that he recorded this week, he will be telling us a little bit more about the efforts that in StandICT we are doing towards the artificial intelligence in the European Observatory, which is going to be followed up by both Carl and Fergal, telling us a little bit about the national strategies, both from Austria and also Ireland. No? And like I said, at the end of all the slot, we will have this Q&A session to try to touch base on your questions. No? But please remember, there is a specific box in Zoom, so please leave there your questions. No? So, first of all, why it's important to have a dedicated effort for ICT standardization. No? So, I guess that for your experience and your background, you are fully aware that innovation and technology are critical enablers, critical building blocks for this digital single market that the Commission is trying to build up. No? So, but what is the problem? The standardization somehow lacks agility, but also the focus, no? Which is sometimes amplified by the challenges which are posed by the global marketplace, mostly coming from the United States and China. No? So this is why it's really, really important that Europe must, somehow rely on ICT standards to really reap the benefits of a broader and also interoperable different technologies. These emerging technologies that are somehow popping up these days. So we really need to have a proper way for using them and a proper way to shaping the agenda. No? So because otherwise it will be really extremely difficult. No? And somehow the European Commission is also setting up this roadmap, in an annual basis, having this rolling plan for ICT standardization. I put it there, the screenshot of the publication, and I'm sure that you will find the link. Pretty much for 2020, the Commission has identified 165 actions, which are somehow grouped into 4 thematic areas. No? So this is a little bit the overall vision. So, but which is pretty much the role for StandICT.eu 2023 somehow. The mission that we actually have is to really build up a European standardization ecosystem. Now, it's not really to define the standards that are required for these emerging technologies, but it's really to try to concentrate 4 main objectives. No? So I'll be quickly touching base on each one of them. No? The first one is an observatory. So StandICT is really having the mission to establish a European observatory and ICT standards to really try to look into the different, to monitor the status of different ICT technologies, no, both at a European level, but also at an international level. No? So our ambition is to really try to collect and cover over 500 standards in both horizontal technologies, could be, for instance, artificial intelligence, like we would say today, but also 5G and beyond 5G, IoT, cybersecurity, cloud, and so on and so forth. But also we're trying to also step into the vertical sectors, no, healthcare, manufacturing, industry 4.0. So it's also important to really see how the confluence of different technologies can actually bootstrap the vertical sectors. No, so here you will find some, pretty much some of the main pointers for this EOS, which is the European Observatory for ICT Standardization. No? Like I said, repository is one of the main goals, try to collect the main ICT standards being undertaken by several SDOs and technical committees, but also it's a place for somehow having a discussion forum, also having quick access to key relevant documents, trying to incentivize through rewards, but also through events. The participation, like today, having really a way for really promoting and disseminating the benefits and why standards are also important, not only for technologies, but also, for instance, for the SMEs, for the small and medium-sized enterprises, because, like I said at the really beginning, Europe must really exploit and benefit from the standardization efforts in technology to really try to increase the market competitiveness, not only from the industry, but also from the smaller players. No? Also important, we do run a standards fellowship program, which is nothing else but an open call program in which we are somehow funding European researchers to really have a position of contribution, but also leadership in main SDOs and technical committees. No? The ambition that we are going to achieve pretty much is to have 10 different open calls throughout 3 years, where we aim to allocate 3 million euros in over 400 funded experts from Europe. So with this effort, we will be somehow facilitating them the possibility to participate, and like I said, try to have leading positions in really critical SDOs and technical committees. No? Right now, we have opened the first open call, which is somehow open until 4th of January next year. So it's going to be pretty much really close to the deadline right now. I mean, it's for the 4th of January. Even if we will be welcoming different proposals regarding technologies like we said, artificial intelligence, big data, and so on and so forth, we will be trying to have priority topics for each one of these open calls, and the one for this particular first open call, it's going to be ICT for healthcare. No? So you can take a look at and in the website you will find the links and also the apply now link, where you can really take a look and see the criteria and the platform to really submit your application. The third main objective that StandICT is looking for is to really build up this community. So it's not a matter of, it's trying to target all the silos that are, like I said, I mean, not only when it comes to technology, but also through the verticals, and try to build up a community here. So StandICT has been running for several years now. No? So just to give you some figures, I mean, we already have interacted with more than 3,000 members, and over 50 external evaluators will help us to select the best applicants coming out from the open calls. 15 are the members who are somehow composing the external advisory group that you will see in a few seconds. And also really extremely important, I mean, StandICT is trying to trying to connect the dots with several of the most relevant European associations related to technology. No? So for instance, we already have signed agreements with INATBA. We are in the process to do so with the 5G Infrastructure Association, also with specific associations for SMEs. So the idea is how we can really build up this community in Europe. No? So I mean, like I said, I mean, this is a really high-level overview of the external advisory board that StandICT is actually working with, which are really renowned experts coming from the principal ICT technological domains. And just to give you, I mean, today is really a special occasion because out of those, we have the participation from 4 of them. I mean, of course, Ray Walls, which is the coordinator of this effort. He won't be speaking, but he's participating as in the webinar today. But like I said, I mean, we also have Lindsay, Fergal, and Carl with us today, presenting their points of view. Last but not least, and with that I will close this brief introduction, is that StandICT is really here also to somehow coordinate the pan-European effort. Even if the Commission is really pushing forward through this, for this roadmap, StandICT is really trying to pull all the strings together somehow. And for that, we are going to run several activities that, like today, we are going to have workshops, webinars, like the one that we are hosting today, several newsletters, press releases, and also importantly, we will be hosting standard assemblies. So like I said, I mean, if you are joining today, it's really great because you will have the opportunity to follow up on new and more information that will be coming up from our side. So with this, I think I have covered well the introduction for StandICT. Of course, I mean, you can you can go to the StandICT.eu website. You will find a lot of information, especially the main entry point to the open calls. But also, I mean, of course, I invite you all to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. And now, without further ado, I will hand over the presenter role to Stefano Nativi, that will be telling us a little bit more about the A-Watch initiative from the Commission. So, Stefano, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jose. And I'm trying, okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Now I'm trying to share my screen. Just give me a few seconds and you should be able to watch my screen. And
we see it.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Then I can switch off my video. Well, I mean, thank you, and I'm very pleased to be here. Let me, put it in the presentation mode. I'm very pleased to be here, and I will explain also what is the link, the recent link established between AI Watch and the StandICT. Let me just clarify that I'm leading the action of AI Watch dealing with the standards monitoring, standards, of course, on artificial intelligence. And so what is AI Watch? Well, the Joint Research Center, as you may know, is the scientific knowledge service provider to the European Commission. And so this is part of a knowledge service provision. I mean, we provide the knowledge and the scientific action in order to monitor the development, uptake, and impact of artificial intelligence for the European Union. And we are doing that, I mean, the Joint Research Center is doing that in close collaboration with DG Connect. And this is a particular important action because such monitoring and such assessment is crucial in order to understand how the European strategy for artificial intelligence is shaping and in February of this year, it was published by European Commission a white paper on European strategy for artificial intelligence, and then also a coordinated plan on artificial intelligence was published in 2018, and AI Watch was mentioned, explicitly mentioned in this plan as an important instrument in order to monitor, assess, and advance the policy action by the European Commission for artificial intelligence. Well, what is doing AI Watch? Well, AI Watch is doing several things. Here I just try to put some important actions and most recent actions also in terms of publications. Certainly, we are in contact with EU members, so I mean countries, the national strategies on artificial intelligence are monitored, collected. We have nominated a sort of ambassador for each country, so there is a permanent link with countries in order to understand what are their national plans and what are the national uptake in terms of artificial intelligence. And in doing that, we collaborate also with OECD. Then we investigate, we monitor the public sector, in particular how far artificial intelligence has been implemented, used by the public sector through a set of use cases. We also collect and analyze data worldwide in order to understand what is the landscape out there in terms of artificial intelligence, in particular as far as publications and companies. We publish a sort of history timeline in order to explain what artificial intelligence has been and the many different, winters and springs of artificial intelligence in the last decades. And finally, we develop a set of methodological approaches in order to recognize useful indicators for this monitoring action. These and many other knowledge bodies are available on AI Watch portal, and this is the link. So if you want to know more, please visit our webpage. And recently, AI Watch Action was mentioned by the European Parliament in its study on opportunities of artificial intelligence, released in June of this year. For example, here I mentioned we map the artificial intelligence use in public services for European Union. We collected 230 use cases, not only dealing with EU members, but also with Switzerland, Norway, and UK. And here you can appreciate the number of use cases considered and the different countries covered. As far as this worldwide, this global mapping, we have recognized something, I mean more than 30,000 artificial intelligence players in the period 2009 and 2018. And in a few days, we are planning an update of this survey. And here on the left side, you can see, I mean, we consider more than 31,000 AI agents, more than 28,000 AI companies, etc. These are the kind of numbers considered in these studies. And you can play with these analyses by accessing through our web pages the iWatch dashboard, and you can you can generate your breakdown according to the thematic areas or the industry or the countries or the publication topics. This is an interactive, of course, dashboard. Associated with these studies, we also promoted, and I coordinate this artificial intelligence and big data community of practice at the Joint Research Center, because the Joint Research Center is a big institution, and there are really many colleagues who have been engaged in artificial intelligence. So we wanted to also monitor and assess the artificial intelligence uptake inside the Joint Research Center. And here we have 160 members and 150 followers. And the main objective, as I said, is to monitor JRC activity on artificial intelligence, but also to provide, knowledge and information to the many colleagues who wants to work on artificial intelligence or who are working on that. And here there are three main studies about this uptake, about the ongoing research activities covering the different European Commission policy areas. The first one was in 2019, then we had another one 1 year later in 2019, and we also had a full survey of artificial intelligence competencies at the Joint Research Center. This year, we promoted a policy lab in order to define AI skills that should be present in the EU public sector. And the outcome of this policy lab will be the basis for a webinar that will run in the next year. As I said, one dedicated action is about monitoring the standardization activities on artificial intelligence. And in particular, this year, we established a Class A liaison with ISO IEC Joint Technical Committee 1, and in particular, of course, the Subcommittee 42. And this was very useful for the Joint Research Center in order to understand, the many ongoing effort in ISO IEC framework. Then we also recognize other relevant standards development organizations. And finally, we started together with the DG Connect document where the aim here is to map the present but also ongoing activities as far as AI standardization in order to support the requirements of the future European Commission regulatory framework on artificial intelligence. This framework was anticipated in the white paper on European strategy for artificial intelligence, and the first proposal is going to be released in January of next year. Then here, of course, the list of the usual, you know, and well recognized SDO. In particular, we establish a direct engagement, as I said, with ISO, IEC, JTC1, but we also are part of a joint European Commission StandICT committee on artificial intelligence, and we could share a focus group of ITUT on environmental efficiency for artificial intelligence. And then, of course, we are in close contact with IEEE, OECD, and ETSI. And recently, I mean, recently means really, you know, few weeks ago, we had, I mean, some joint meetings with the StandICT project, because we didn't want to redo existing efforts, in particular for standardization landscape survey. And we know that this is one of the objectives of this project, as Jose explained very well. And so, I mean, we started a collaboration on this ground. Well, I mean, this is just to say that at the Joint Research Center there is an in order to reduce the footprint of innovative technologies, and so in particular we wanted to bring this experience also on artificial intelligence in this ITUT focus group. And my last slide here. We have just accomplished the first draft of the deliverable, where we map the existing standardization effort on AI to the several requirements recognized by the European Commission for the future regulatory framework on artificial intelligence. And here the focus, it is very, you know, precise. So not any artificial intelligence system or application, but only high-risk application systems. And in a particular, requirements here are about ethics, transparency, privacy, quality, accuracy, testing, and monitoring aspects. So this is, you know, this activity tries to be very focused and to be very effective in order to support the DG Connect, which is developing this proposal. If you want to know more, please visit our webpage. I just included also here the link, and at the top on the right side you have my contact email. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Stefano. So we do have a couple of questions, but maybe we can take one now. Stefano, if you are okay with that, and we can leave the other for the second and for the last part of the webinar. So the question from one of the members of the audience is, are you, I guess, the GRC monitoring, gathering information about artificial intelligence framework open source activities?
Oh, yes, I mean, this is part of our monitoring. We have not yet published any specific study, but indeed, I mean, open source, and let me also say a sort of reference framework for artificial intelligence is part of our interest. We have started collecting sources and data, and hopefully in the next year, in 2021, we will try to publish some studies, let me also add that we have done a similar exercise, but not focus on open source for any artificial intelligence, system or application. But we started studying vertical sectors, and we developed a couple of studies, one on healthcare sector and the other the transport. And inside the studies, there is also the available, technological reference framework, including open sources.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stefano. So now we can move on to the next speaker, that even if it's not today here with us, he kindly recorded a video. So please, can you put on the video, Andrea?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this short introduction. I'd like to speak about some of the work at StandICT 2023, particularly very energetic activity we're doing on landscaping of AI standards. And before talking about that in detail, I just give you a brief overview of who I am. Lindsay Frost, working at NEC Labs in Germany, in Heidelberg, and member since a few months of the expert advisory group of StandICT.eu 2023. My other roles are in ETSI, member of the board, chairman of the information management group, chairman of the AI oversight and collaboration group, and involved in several StandICT ETSI coordination groups. So what is the universe of different groups doing information creation and analysis on AI? There are very, very many. We have so far listed about 160, and there are a number of alliances, many of them European, a number of research projects, a number of educational activities in different universities where they particularly try to promote knowledge about AI, not just research. Government activities, of course, and various ones from OECD side to European and so on, and many, many activities in different standards development organizations. So inside StandICT, we're trying to see what is the landscape and how do we make the information which is out there more available? How do we find what I call here the good stuff? So who wants it? So obviously engineers and standard experts need to know what's happening in other areas so they don't do double work. The enterprises and small industry players, they need to find the right information, compare solutions, and don't waste time or money. Governments need to analyze what's happening, judge which are the best options, and try to create a balanced set of regulations and also certification. And then activities like smart cities, which rely on AI for citizen services, they need to look for good explanations of explainable AI, trustability, and so on, so they can judge that they are delivering what the best that's available. And of course, I listen last, but the security experts want to make sure that their guidelines are actually noticed and implemented, because it's often the last thing to be done, and usually difficult to introduce too late. So let me say, how big is this landscape of standards work? If you look just in ETSI, you'll find altogether around 50,000 standards. IEC has another 100,000 or so, ITU, W3C, SENLEC, and so on. If you do not know these acronyms, don't mind. We'll try in StandICT to help you become aware of the relevant places. So what we've done is we started creating a kind of library or lookup of what's out there in the AI standardization. And as a first trial, we have looked at the UN ideas of sustainable development goals. Many of them are relevant, but what we picked in particular is a tool to achieve the goals, which is information processing, and in particular the area of computing, and not exactly cybersecurity or IoT. And under the computing aspect, AI, in various places, as I mentioned, alliances and of course STOs. In the STOs, we're focusing initially on some of the major players, but we'll be extending that, and not all are listed here at all. It's still work in progress, or even work just begun. And the next step, or the ongoing step, is to dig. So if I went looking at IEEE or StandICT or IEC, I will find a number of different groups, each one of them doing some activity related in some way to AI. So what we're doing in the expert group is trying to do a quick, not a quick cut, an early classification of what specifications exist, and the fundamental ones about describing use cases or definitions or terms of for reference architectures or roadmaps, what you might say are good entry points into learning about the concepts. Then we're saying, okay, many of the documents are talking about ethics, explainability, liability. Then another set look at the security, the cybersecurity, the privacy aspects. Once a system is conceived or even implemented, the question is governance. How do you manage it? How do you make sure that policies, corporate policies, government policies, citizen-led policies are actually observed and implemented and tested and measured that they're working as desired? And then there is some work being done on algorithms and a lot of research work being done, which may become relevant to standard experts or to citizens. So there are also a lot of discussions about the quality of the data which goes into AI systems and how to classify good or bad data, and of course how to classify data at all. That is so-called ontology work, which is vital for getting useful answers out of AI systems. Then questions come up about how to move information around, and for that protocols are needed. And last, but maybe you could rather say first, is societal impact of all of the above standards and ideas. What goals are being facilitated by these standards, and what is the actual impact on the citizen? And there are documents and specifications and guidelines on all of this. So we are looking through, by consulting experts, what are the various documents in different STOs. Here's a few. Then we're digging deeper, depending on topic area, and this is a very, very partial list. And then we dig even deeper and say, well, in StandICT.eu in Germany, there's a very nice white paper on the AI roadmap, which just came out. Or in ETSI, there's a white paper about everything happening there on AI-related issues, or et cetera, et cetera. So in this way, we locate documents, sort them broadly, and the way we're doing that at the moment in the expert group is to create a simple Excel sheet, which is gradually growing, of the organizations like AI Watch or AI for Cities, or high-level expert group, which has closed now, but create a lot of material. We're listing the, you don't see it here on the screen, but we're listing the web page to go there, the basic summary of what they're doing, and if it's an alliance, etc. So we're gradually, you could say that's our address book, where to go to get information. And then the information we're collecting and being referred to is collected in a different sheet, currently growing. I think we have about 300 since a few weeks of different groups which produce something, short title so we can find it, and the web page, a brief overview, and again, a classification, is it a standard or a white paper, and so on. Sometimes we locate the actual publication date, which is useful in case something is 3 years old. It may no longer, it may be superseded already. And then the classification in those 7 or 8 topics, which I mentioned earlier, is a quick guide to locating, for example, something on fundamental aspects or something on ethics and so on. So you can imagine this is sorting the bookshelf on the library. These are the books, the documents, and we're trying to locate them into common areas. And why we're doing it is to try to make the accumulated information more useful for you, the users, and for the experts who are trying to upgrade the information. So the basic library work is just getting a tool in place. And it would be very nice to have if we can eventually allow that users can take a copy or use a web interface to annotate knowledge about each document or each group and upgrade, let's say, the collaboration, the collaborative information exchange. And there's a separate activity in StandICT called the European Standards Observatory, and they are setting up a very interesting platform to allow users and experts to exchange information in a way which lets people find interesting remarks made by others in the past and recent past. So the idea is to keep track of what organizations are working, try to keep track of the interesting documents they're creating, and try to capture expert and citizen viewpoints about those documents to indeed identify gaps where something is needed. There may not yet be any specification or any guideline, and it might be important to fill that gap before, for example, the need arises in some liability or in some specific use case in e-health, etc. And that will be available to help experts to compare the existing documents and find the best solutions. Many people are working in 2 or 3 places, like me, as you saw earlier, trying to make sure that the information is spread around. But it's a big planet, and we need something like StandICT in order to help everyone locate the information they need on time without too much individual digging. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to Lindsay, even if he's not today with us, but his presentation was really insightful. So now we moving forward, and we have Carl Brun from Austrian Standards. So Carl, the floor is yours. Carl, I think you're unmuted. Carl, I believe
yes.
that you...
Now it's working. Now it's working.
Perfect.
That's
Thank you.
That's the problem with a double micro. But now you can not only see me, but also especially can hear me. So thank you very much, and wonderful good afternoon here from Vienna to you. And I'm very happy to share with you what is our perspective in terms of artificial intelligence and how we can support as a national standardization body all stakeholders in not only drafting related standards, but also in the way of applying these standards. And yes, later we come to the topic of the assessment. So we can see here that if you think about Austria, your first ideas might be about, oh, Austria is a very nice country with nice mountains, skiing, great, delicious cakes, a lot of tradition, especially the sound of music. I must confess that not so many Austrian citizens know the movie, by the way. And of course, Sigmund Freud, he's one of the founders of the psychoanalysis, but we'll come to that later. But what people don't know is that we have a very lively scene of startups, of highly innovative companies, most of them so-called hidden champions in the high-tech area, like in virtual vehicle, self-driving cars, or developers of chatbots and robotics and so on. Coming to artificial intelligence, we have seen that there is an AI landscape for Austria, which was published in October. And we were positively surprised that we were recognized as one of those organizations in part of this AI landscape in Austria. I think that's a great recognition of what we are doing, how we can support Austrian stakeholders. But that's only the result of a process in engaging with stakeholders, making them aware what standards and standardization is about, how they can bring out the maximum for them together with others. And in doing so, what we are doing is to be a face in the community. I think that's a recommendation, and I think it's also applied by all standards, successful standardization bodies, irrespective are they national or regional or international, that they are part of the community, especially a part here in Austria, part of the startup community, where we have some very reliable and very good running collaboration like Austrian Startup, Accelerate, etc., especially to make the new companies aware, the startups and spin-offs, and see how we can involve them in standardization. I have mentioned Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, and a little warning what I will also present to you. Let's put artificial intelligence on the sofa, on the couch of Sigmund Freud, if we speak then about ethics. Of course, I don't have to tell you, standards and standardization is not a nice hobby for freelancers, and so what you can do let me say in the leisure time, it's part of a strategic activity of a company or of a university or even of the whole country. And we have been involved in the drafting of the national national strategy for artificial intelligence. And even we are not for profit organization, we know the basics of running a business. And of course, a good business needs not only a strategy, but a mission with a clear vision. And we were involved in the drafting of this strategy of the Austrian government, commissioned by the Ministry for Digitization and for the Ministry for Technology and Innovation. And there were several roundups, expert panels, etc. And with a huge relief, we have then read what is the outcome of this activity, and you can see here that the ministries, the government see here a clear need to have standards to ensure, and I think that's the obvious one, to ensure transparency in AI, security, fairness, and interoperability. And it was also mentioned that we have to play a very important role as a national standardization body, but especially to channel Austrian interests, Austrian comments, Austrian voices in global standardization, to be the gateway for Austrian stakeholders to European and to international standardization. I will come to that also again, but later. But you can see here, especially that AI is not only a tool. AI will have an impact on the business model of more or less all companies, also in the public sector, especially in the healthcare sector, but also in legal tech, etc., etc. And with that, we can also see here with some services regarding unemployment that if we come to some algorithms, we need to ensure that they are unbiased. And so that is a clear field of application where we need to take into consideration or to buy ethical guidelines. And the topic is now how to incorporate these ethical guidelines in technical standards. You can see here also some very important issues, recognitions that not only a multi-stakeholder initiative is needed, and I think standardization is a from the tradition, from our genes, a multi-stakeholder process, but also a special emphasis is put on the close involvement of SMEs, and that's a wonderful opportunity that we have StandICT, where we have funding especially for SMEs and other stakeholders which don't have the capacity to participate in international standardization. These strategic recommendations, which were first drafted in an expert by an expert panel and resulted in a report, is now incorporated in the strategy of the so-called Artificial Intelligence Mission Austria 2030 of the both ministries, Federal Ministry for Digitization and Economic Affairs, as well as for the Ministry of Innovation and Technology. And you can see here in the right side that again AI is a great opportunity to process innovation, of course, but doing also new business. So will it have an impact on the business model, and all those who think they can continue with their traditional business model, I think they are not on the wrong way, on the wrong track. They have to re-evaluate what they are doing and how AI will impact their way of doing business. It's also that in this leaflet of the strategy of the Austrian government highlighted is that we have to do some actions on standardization. And you can see here from the report of the expert panel, again, what is the benefit of doing standards, of drafting standards in a field of AI, and a clear recommendation: please participate in standardization, especially in GTC1 of ISO/ISC in the subcommittee 42, in order to incorporate Austrian interests and national know-how in technical standards. And technical standards, standardization is a tool for know-how transfer from the national side to others via international standardization. And again, re-emphasized that targeted funding is needed to optimize the use of AI technology. And that means also targeted funding to be involved in standardization as an applied tool for dissemination of know-how. And this is also, you can see here, is highlighted to be includes incentives for developing standards. Again, here's a clear relation with the StandICT.eu 2023 project. Walk the talk, that's key. So what platform do we have? In Austria, we have here, you can see a working group, which is managed by us. We have more than 50 experts from a broad range of stakeholders, a very excellent stakeholder mix. People coming from ministries, public authorities, from companies, SMEs, startups, research organizations from the civil society, for example, disabled people, etc. They are discussing and define together how good might look like in the field of AI. Also the topic of ethical aspects. I have highlighted two organizations where we have also a cooperation, which is OVE, and I have seen one from the participants list that one of my colleagues from OVE is also with us. Since good hello, servus. And we have also in our working group IEEE Technology Center, which is situated in Austria, in Vienna, and we have a very good cooperation with them. And yes, that's the national working group, and the experts from this national working group, they participate in the already mentioned StandICT focus group on AI. And perhaps you have heard that in StandICT there's the proposal from Danish Standard to set up a joint technical committee on AI, not only mirroring the activities from ISO-IEC, but also drafting, elaborating a European standard if there's a need due to European regulation, etc. So. And of course, our experts participate in the ISO activities, not only of Subcommittee 42 on AI, but also related ISO activities, because we have seen that there are some activities, for example, in the field of machinery safety, where we have artificial intelligence applications as well. So there's an exchange beyond the traditional limits, the borders of committees. And I think that's one of the lessons learned from the past, that with all these new technologies, that the additional borders do not longer exist. I would also say they are really a barrier for progress. So we have here a really broad project-based approach, where we can see how to bring all the stakeholders, the bright brains together, and to solve together the challenges we are facing. Some hot topics I want to present to you at the end of my presentation. Digital humanism, it's one of the terms we are used in, especially in German-speaking countries. And that means to put the human being, humans, in the center of all innovations, of all technologies. And that's also true and applicable in the field of AI. AI technology is not to fulfill or for its own. They have to serve a purpose, to satisfy the needs of humans. So let us put humans in the center of all these AI standardization activities. And that brings me to the next. It's all about ethics. It's about trustworthiness. But we have to define what ethics is about. Is it, do we speak about universal ethics, etc.? Another topic is if we have self-claimed ethical AI, how can one assess, is this true or not? I'm not entitled to share any details with you, but we were aware that there are some pilot projects running here in Austria, and especially in Vienna, about the assessment of AI, which is not only about the final product, but it relates to the whole process of the whole system, how one designs AI, especially which kind of training data you have, how to feed the algorithms, and then to check also the code for the AI. And that's a very interesting, there are very interesting pilot projects. And I think next year, end of next year, we know more, and perhaps we can share then some details with you about the learnings from that. Again, AI is not only affecting one field of application, it's really cross-cutting. So it's the key is to bring all the organizations together and let us do a cooperation. So ISO, IEC, StandICT, ETSI, IEEE, etc. Bring all the bright brains together to find a common solution to serve stakeholders' needs. That is key. And we are on a very good way towards that. That people are aware. It's not enough to say there are great standardization activities. Let the people know, the stakeholders know, engage with them. That's one of the requests we have to all of you, especially representatives from standards development organizations. Spread the news, engage, be a face in the community, and bring the stakeholders in the drafting, in the machine room, in the engine room of standardization committees, that everybody, especially SMEs and startups, have a voice and can enter a dialogue with all the other companies and all other stakeholders. That means participate, but again, participate in standardization is not a hobby. It has a very clear strategic aspect. and has to be aligned with use cases, business cases, and the whole strategy of a company, of a government, of a country, of a region. So thank you very much. That's the news I want to share with you from Austria, and wishing all the best. And now it's time for the next speaker from Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Yeah, Fergal, the floor is yours. So whenever you're ready.
No. Hi, everybody. My name is Fergal Finn, and I'm a standards manager at NSAI, which is Ireland's national standards body. And I manage a small team of standards officers working mainly in ICT and new and emerging technologies. So today, I'm not going to talk to you much about standards, but I will talk to you about Ireland's AI strategy, of which standards are a major player in that strategy. I was very interested in Carl's presentation there, and quite satisfied that Ireland has very similar activities at a national standards level, similar to Austria. So where will I start with the AI strategy? So in Ireland, our government in 2019 released a very high level document called Future Jobs Ireland. This followed the action plan for jobs. Our action plan for jobs was a very clear and direct objective on every government department, every government agency to create jobs in Ireland during the recession. We have now created those jobs, and we're looking into the future to see what kind of skills we need and what kind of jobs we can develop into the future. So the Future Jobs has 5 main pillars. One is embracing innovation and technology change. Another is improving SME productivity. Third, enhancing skills and developing and attracting talent. And Ireland is quite successful in attracting foreign direct investment into the state. We have a very highly educated population, and we are native English speakers. The fourth pillar is increasing participation in the labour force. At one time, at our lowest employment rate was, I think, 4%. So they were trying to get that last 4% back into the labour force in some way or shape or another. And the fifth pillar is the transitioning to a low carbon economy. So from the Future Jobs first pillar, there was one ambition to implement a strategic approach to maximize the benefits from digitization. And from that, a number of strategies were published and are being developed. So we published a year ago, almost to the day, our Industry 4.0 strategy. We are currently revising our national digital strategy, which was first implemented in 2013. And for the last two years, we've been working on our national artificial intelligence strategy. We were really close to publishing it last March. However, we had a change in government, and we had to go back and revise the strategy. So it's not yet published. However, as part of those strategies, another aspect of Future Job was to create a new pilot program, which they call Top Teams. And the top teams basically was the government departments handing over a task to another government body to liaise and collaborate with private industry. So a lot of our government departments don't collaborate very well with industry. So they ask a group like Top Team to bring all the stakeholders together and do a very short, sharp, focused piece of work. The 3 top teams that were proposed under future jobs were one for offshore renewable energy. So we're an island, we have lots of offshore and we have lots of wind energy. So we're going to put together a strategy to implement that. We have a top team on government tech, on GovTech. And then the 3rd top team was for artificial intelligence. So that the artificial intelligence top team was handed to the Department of Business Enterprise and Innovation. And from there, the top team took two routes. Through a lot of consultation, public consultation and workshops, the department realized that there was 2 major aspects to artificial intelligence. One was the standards and its direct link to the regulations and how they would support the regulations. And on the other was on the ground, the development and the deployment. So NSAI, the National Standards Authority of Ireland, they have been tasked with leading out a top team on AI standards. And our Enterprise Ireland, which is a sister agency, have been tasked with leading the top team for AI development and deployment. So we're working quite closely together. So the goal of the top team for standards, as defined to us by the department, was to expand Ireland's international leadership in AI standards development and increase standards-enabled impact. Our goal as NSAI as an output from this top team is to produce and document the development and deployment roadmap of AI as a technology by creating a framework supported with standards that give advice or that can advise government on how to assist Irish industry. So right now, Carl would have mentioned the ISO IEC International Standards Group, the Joint Committee 1 and their Subcommittee 42 for Artificial Intelligence. To date, they have published 6 international standards on AI and are developing 21 new standards in AI. NSAI has the Secretariat for Working Group 3, which is the trustworthiness. So it addresses ethics, trustworthiness, bias in neural networks, and risk management of AI systems. And the convener of that working group, a colleague of Ray Walsh's, is David Philippe from the ADAPT Research Centre. So we were already very well placed at an international level with our standards activities. And of course, we have a national committee participating. So we looked at the stakeholders that we could get involved in our top team. And we were very lucky in that we had a very active national standards committee. So we grew from that and we expanded a little more. We have invited members of the legal profession onto the top team. This is very important because I think there's an awful lot to be learned from navigating through the GDPR is one aspect. And also then we have a very direct line to the EU expert group on AI who are developing the regulations. So we brought those people in to document really what we can do to assist companies from the legal aspects of AI. Then we brought in the industry people. So as I said, in Ireland, we have a lot of foreign direct investment, and we're quite lucky that way. So we invited a number of those companies in who all have initiatives in artificial intelligence. We also then brought in a number of academics and researchers who are all working in the field of AI. And of course, we have our government agencies who deal with Indigenous Irish companies, which is Enterprise Ireland, and then the multinational companies who are represented by IDA Ireland. They're the agency that bring in the multinational companies to Ireland. So they're that's a broad overview of the stakeholders that we have on the top team. So the structure of the top team. So as you know, AI is huge. It's horizontal. It's vertical. It's lots of things. So we decided that we would break up into working groups. We have one working group just dealing with the legal aspects of AI. So we will be issuing almost a set of a report on what's happening just now in the EU with regard to regulation. But we will also then make recommendations to the government on what national regulations we may see fit to introduce into Ireland. We have a group looking at the wants, the needs of the multinational companies in Ireland. And of course, Ireland houses the headquarters for many large companies like Facebook and Google, etc. SMEs. Now, the SME is very important. And we have a separate group under industry just dealing with the SMEs and their wants and needs, because we have, not too unlike Austria, we have a lot of startups who are very interested and very keen in AI. We have a lot of SMEs who have a lot of data, a lot of technology to collect huge amounts of data, and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to make it work for them. So our top team document will assist SMEs in adopting artificial intelligence. We have Ray and a number of his colleagues throughout the research centres in Ireland working together, and they are going to advise the top team on where AI is going, the new and emerging aspects of artificial intelligence, and that for us then highlights where it's going and also what we need to address for the future of AI adoption in Ireland. And finally, then we have a working group on the society and the skills. Now, funnily enough, when we addressed the skills needs in Ireland, we weren't doing too badly actually, from the point of view of competency, and the quantity of competency we have for the skills required in artificial intelligence. And what we understood as well from the people that we attracted onto the top team was many of them also were members of ethical associations or in AI. So we have one from Women in AI in there. So what's going to emerge here is, while you have a specific needs and wants for multinational or SMEs, you will also then naturally bring out the societal needs of AI. So the outputs from our top team, we have a terms of reference document, which basically lays out exactly what it is we're going to do and how we're going to do it. We are just about to publish our interim report. So that's like, if I was to equate that to international documents, I would say it's our white paper, but we just don't want to go calling it a white paper. So it's an interim report, and basically what we're going to use it for is as the handbook, the reference manual for our top teams to support everything that they know through standards. The final output, well, I'd say that the end goal for us then is to produce a set of recommendations to the Irish government on AI, and furnished them with the AI roadmap, which is supported by standards and also then the legislation. But we didn't just want to stop there. What we intend to do as well is to take that same document and modify it in such a way that it can be used as an industry guide for Irish companies to adopt and embrace AI. And I guess, you know, there's part of that as well will be down to the Irish citizen. But I guess if an Irish citizen doesn't have much of an interest in AI, aside from Alexa, they're probably not going to read our document. So how have we gone about this? We have spent some time, the top team within NSAI, looking at how we're going to manage this project, and we have adopted design thinking. So this was hugely beneficial to us, because this process of managing a project brought out a number of aspects in that we hadn't considered at the very start. So we've been doing a lot of groundwork before we commit to bringing in the stakeholders. So it requires a lot of ideation. This is a word, idea creation, and it's very, what would I say, customer centered, and focuses a rather lot on the customer experience. Who is our customer? Our customer is no longer old guys like me. Our customer now is millennials, young people who believe nothing, Google everything, question everything before they make a decision. You know, it's no longer word of mouth. This new generation, they like to learn from the internet mostly, but they like to learn and question. So what we have done so far is we have interviewed a number of companies. So we had a couple of multinationals and quite a selection of SMEs. And we sat down with them in a number of workshops, and we kind of dragged out of them in conversation their need statements. And after that, then we tried to understand their needs. And after gathering all this data and putting it together with a lot of Post-its, we identified patterns in their needs. We then analyzed them, broke them down, redrafted and reframed those needs statements. And we had another workshop where we validated and prioritized those wants and needs of Irish companies. So from that, we've the initial ideas and solution directions. So we have a very good understanding from the outset of where we want to go and what solutions companies want from a government strategy. So it'll help us to evaluate, select, and prioritize our outputs. And I guess we've been quite delayed because of the COVID-19 this year with our top team, but in 2021 we will be going at this hammer and tongs with an end sight in coming for us. So look, that is a look at the Irish AI strategy. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you very much, Fergal. So, I mean, unfortunately, we have gone over time. So it's already 20 minutes over time. So unfortunately, there is no space for more questions and answers. So with this, let me just wrap up, because I think today we had a really interesting panel with us. I mean, covering really from really high level to really top, from the high level to the really national strategies, because we started with Stefano, I mean, and the AI Watch initiative, which is somehow driven by the European Commission. They're trying to really have this as this tool for having this dashboard to really navigate and to really have an entry point for all AI-related actions somehow, no? Because they're monitoring at worldwide scale the AI landscape. No? With that, we went through Lindsay and the European Observatory that somehow StandICT is pushing forward. No? And I mean, he mentioned that the AI is somehow exploding. So we really need to see how we can find the good stuff, as he claimed. No, so somehow the efforts are going into how we can make the information really more useful for the end users. No. After that, we had both Carl and Fergal. I mean, Carl step into artificial intelligence has to really. The need behind artificial intelligence is not only about technology, but it's also about how we can enforce transparency, security, fairness, and interoperability, like we said at the really beginning. No? Somehow we need to have a close involvement of the SMEs. This was also a point taken by Fergal. No? And also the ethical guidelines. It's really important in the AI discussion. No? And also Carl mentioned the Artificial Intelligence Mission 2030 for Austria that will be released soon. And last but not least, of course, Fergal, he described a little bit the different missions internally. Trying to define specific themes, legal, multinational companies, but also really important, the SMEs, how we can help and empower these SMEs to make data work, no? And this is really important, also complemented by the research and academia. No? So, like I said, I think we had today a really interesting panel. Trying to balance a little bit from really top level to the bottom level, and no other than really wish you all thank you for being here with us today, and of course, happy wishing you a Merry Christmas. Please keep safe yourself from this pandemic, and really thank you from StandICT project.
Hey, well, you all, thanks for being here. See you soon. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho.